I see numbers rising, so that's very exciting. Just wait a minute until everyone's here.
I feel like we should have brought elevator music for everyone.
Yeah, right. That's a
You can just hum it instead.
right. Everyone just like sing now. Well, no one's. I'm certainly not gonna sing.
I was not warned that that was going to be part of the deal. Terrifying.
All right, so like there's a fair amount of people here and people are saying hello. So I'm just gonna get started. Welcome to our panel called Knowledge is Power, Quidditch Research and Surveys. My name is Rika. I'm going to be moderating today. And yeah, so as you can see from the name of the panel, we're going to be talking about Quidditch research and surveys and everything relating to that, what kind of research has already been done and what are the benefits that we can gain from research. So we have a very exciting group of people here from all over the world. The time zone combination is horrible. So yeah, I'm excited to see what you can all bring to the discussion. Yes, so just quickly going over the structure. First of all, everyone's going to introduce themselves, and then we are going to have a quick discussion about yeah, why research is useful and why specifically all the research that you guys have done is useful. Maybe some more questions after that if they have the time, and then there's going to be a Q&A in the last 15 minutes. So people watching, feel free to use the Q&A function. I think you can also upload other people's questions if you like them, and we'll get to those in the end. All right, so introduction round. I'm just gonna get started. My name's Rika. My pronouns are visible there, she, her. And I'm from Leipzig, Germany. I play for the team there, been involved since the beginnings of German Quidditch. And yeah, until very recently, I was the Human Resources Director of the IQA. And for the past year, I've also been part of the Quidditch Research Collective, who have done, and are still doing, a survey and research into Quidditch volunteering. But we will hear all about that. So we have an alphabetical list of people. So Abby, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name's Abby, my pronouns are she, her. I'm the current Vice President of Quidditch UK and Captain of Oxford Mammoths. I've been playing Quidditch since 2012. I started out with the Radcliffe Chimeras and then moved on to Bristol Bears, and I currently obviously play with the Oxford Mammoths. In terms of research, I hold a Master's in Linguistics from the University of Cambridge, and I was a policy researcher in higher education focusing on industrial strategy. I now work at a social mobility charity and I contribute to analysis of our programs to ensure that we're having an impact on the young people that we work with. I also do a lot of research for QUIDDITCH UK, but I won't go too much into those projects because I guess that's what we're here to discuss.
Oh, I guess that's me then. Alphabets are difficult. Hi, I'm Annemieke, I'm 23, pronoun she, her, and I'm from the Netherlands. And I started playing in 2018. And then in 2019, I started actually with live streaming when I realized that there are very few female and femme people in live stream commentary. And I got so fed up with it. And I mean, I guess we all kind of know why, but I wanted to have some data to back up that actually the only reason why women don't do this is because they just don't feel confident doing so. So I figured the only way we're going to figure this out if I just throw out a Google survey. And that's sort of how I accidentally, as a biologist, started doing sociology research. It was kind of a happy mistake. And then I moved on to looking at refereeing confidence. And now together with Rika and Rachel and some others, I'm looking at the experiences of upper level volunteers with a global survey that we took in summer of last year. So it's very exciting for a biologist to be looking at all of these human things, not plants. Very weird.
Hi, I'm Ash. I also started playing in 2012. I think that seems ages ago. I can't really remember. Currently not playing all that much because career and life is difficult and takes up too much time away from Quidditch, but never mind. So I started playing with the Oxford Chimeras, Radcliffe Chimeras, then moved on to Raptors, played for Team UK as well. I actually work as a doctor, so a lot of my Quidditch career was as a medical student and then as a junior doctor. So naturally ended up as the first aider for most of the early tournaments, dealing with all the injuries that somehow people managed to give themselves. And in a similar way, just the frustration of throwing out a Google survey, that's kind of how my research into Quidditch injuries came about, trying to work out how to stop people from doing their very best from hurt themselves and try and make it impossible for them to do so, to varying success. But yeah, that is me.
Hi everyone, my name is Eleonora. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I go by Nora most of the time, so you can call me Nora. I am originally from Italy and I moved to Australia 6 years ago and started playing Quidditch with the Newcastle Fireballs and now with the Valkyries. And it's 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. here. So I'm gonna be yawning throughout and chugging coffee. I am also a doctor, but now I work as a lecturer and researcher at the University of Newcastle. And my contribution has not been as impactful and global as all of the panelists before me, as my role was primarily within Quidditch Australia as the governance officer and as the lead of the initiative to achieve national sporting organization recognition. To do so, we had to create a strategic plan, and that's where I applied my skills and my research expertise. And I'll tell you more about that in a second.
I guess it's me next. Hi, my name is Josephine and I live in Vienna, where I've also studied. I studied anthropology because I was interested in how we as humans are shaped by the environment and how we shape our environment and what meaning we give to our world. I've been playing Quidditch since 2014 and I'm involved with the Vienna Vanguards and coaching and team management, and I'm also involved with Austria in the social media parts. And I already did my bachelor thesis on Quidditch, and for me it was kind of clear that I wanted to do my master thesis and research on Quidditch as well, and that I want to have a closer look at gender inclusion and equality in sports, kind of a bit like Annemieke did. In my thesis, I looked at the relationship of gender in sports in general, and then I used Quidditch as a case study for an empirical interview-focused research. My main question was to examine the potential of our sports to break with notions of heteronormative gender identity and male superiority in sports, and also to see to what extent those beliefs are actually still perpetuated and still present. And I can talk about that later. And yes, that's me.
Hi, so I'm up next. I'm Rachel. My pronouns are she, her. I currently play for the Glasgow Grim Reapers. I've been playing since 2014 and previously played for Durham University Quidditch Club. And I also referee. I have a research master's in statistics from the University of Durham, and I'm currently a PhD student in the Department of Computer and Information Sciences at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. My research currently focuses on wearable technology, specifically its use for people with postural tachycardia syndrome. And I have a stats background. I'm very interested in quantitative research and just doing interesting things with numbers and seeing what you can find out. And I'm part of the Quidditch Research Collective and spent last year working on the survey with them, whilst working on a survey of my own for my PhD at exactly the same time, pretty much. And I also briefly taught some survey design classes to undergraduates. And I think that's most of my current background. I'm very interested in combining the academic skills you have already with Quidditch and seeing how you can take something that might be slightly dry on the page and realizing this can make a difference and make people aware of something, and just intersectionality within those issues.
Hi everyone, I guess I'm next. My name is Sam Singh. My pronouns are he, him. I'm on the US side. I'm in the Midwest United States. I'm affiliated with USQ. I am part of the QUICK initiative, the Quidditch Injury Collection Knowledge Initiative. So this we started pretty recently, about the past year, and the focus is on injury prevention. Specifically right now, our first phase that we talk about is concussion injury awareness, attitudes, and then we'll continue our next few phases as the future progresses. Regarding myself, interestingly, I actually do not have much of a Quidditch background. I actually, prior to joining USQ and being involved in the Quidditch community, actually did injury collection research with USA Rugby and rugby internationally. And then prior to that, I was heavily involved in football, but not from a research aspect, but more from an injury prevention aspect, American football. And so one thing that I really found interesting is just how unique Quidditch is as a sport. There's some aspects to Quidditch that are just are relatively understudied and I think would be wonderful to be able to actually see Quidditch just continue to grow and have us have more knowledge towards preventing injuries and also helping player safety. So I'm really excited about this panel, and then just seeing more and more people who are also involved in injury prevention is just super exciting.
Yeah, great. It's so cool to hear you all speak, and I'm just realizing that we're probably the panel with the least US attendance, which is funny. All right, so yeah, let's dive into the discussion. We're actually quite on time, which is something I was very worried about, being the German I am. So yeah, let's just jump right into it, and just discuss what particular research angles are useful and interesting to explore, and why your particular angle that you chose is what is the impact that you can make there, and that also has been made there. So maybe we'll just start with NGB specific surveys and research. So we have Abby, Nora, and some on that angle, and I know Abby, you've been doing something as part of Quidditch UK as well. So maybe you just want to start what you did and what the specific aims were there, and maybe even some gains is not the right word, but any aims you reached, and how that improved your work as an NGB.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done a couple of large-scale surveys for Quidditch UK. I think I'll focus on the more recent one just because it's a little bit more relevant. So the first one I did was the Players and Attitude Survey, which was a really, in hindsight, far too large scope survey with loads and loads of questions, and I ended up with an immense amount of data that I had to deal with all on my own, which was just aimed at gathering information on demographics within the sport, attitudes around certain areas. Well, I say certain areas, I was volunteering, there was events, and there was sort of gender, and it was really wide ranging. So it was useful and interesting, but I think I definitely learned a lot from that project. And then the following one, which was the community consultation for our, at the time, 2021 season structure, was much more focused. So I did effectively a round of focus groups following our general forum with our clubs, which was asking for opinions and consultations on our proposed university community split. So we're effectively overhauling the entire season. We wanted to propose a whole new calendar, and we wanted to split people into their university league and a community league, similar to the split that had already occurred in the US. So I went into those focus groups with some really specific ideas around what we kind of wanted the season to look like, but we also wanted to make sure the player voice was heard in that, and that was really key. I think I saw somewhere in the materials around this panel the language around democratization of Quidditch, and that was really what we were aiming for, is we wanted to get an idea from the people that it would affect the most, like our players, what they felt on that split and what they thought of the calendar and how we wanted to proceed with that. So I did some focus groups, got some really useful feedback from there, and then I went on to a survey. So we gathered a little bit of quantitative data on specific areas where basically people in the focus groups had disagreed and we didn't have a clear route to go down. So an example of that is we were talking about like doing sort of smaller regionals. So in the UK, we were looking at doing about 5 regional areas with probably around sort of 8 teams each. And some people were like, yeah, that would be great, less travel, cheaper, quicker, one-day events. And some people were like, no, we want the big regionals where the country's just split in 2 and you have like 20 teams at each. So we then basically fed that into our survey to be like, okay, you have to choose one. Which do you pick? So that was an example of kind of taking people through multiple stages of research and gathering that data at the first stage to then feed that into the second and kind of get like a final answer. On that particular question, the data was again nearly 50-50, which was super helpful. But that's sometimes it goes like that. But yeah, we fed that directly into the season structure that we were proposing and the changes that we wanted to make, which obviously that was for the 2021 seasons, which obviously didn't happen. So I can't give you like the direct outcome, but we're about to run a similar series for 21-22. So watch this space.
Yeah, great. That's interesting that you brought up like the democratizing Quidditch aspect, which is something I also had in my notes, because like also from my work at the IQA, I feel like that's a bit something that's kind of emerging, but maybe that's just my feel. And like link to Nora, because you also did focus groups, right? Maybe you can talk a bit about that and maybe also mention like, do you see that this is like a trend in NGBs, like interacting more with the community through surveys? And
I definitely think so. I think at its beginning, Quidditch was very unstructured and very undirected, and we are moving now towards professional. Anyway, it's becoming more professional and it's becoming more organized. And as part of this push to make Quidditch better and more organized and also recognized, Quidditch Australia began working towards official recognition from Sport Australia to be officially recognized as a sport. To do that, one part of the criteria concerns Quidditch having a strategic plan and Quidditch Australia having a strategic plan. We know that there are other strategic plans in other NGBs. We definitely wanted our strategic plan to be very community driven. We are fortunate, maybe not fortunate, to be not very many in Australia. In general, there's very few people in Australia. I don't know if people know this, but there's only about 23 million. So we have just around 1,000 Quidditch players in Australia. And we really thought we could tap into all of their priorities, their desires for Quidditch. So we started this with a strategic forum in February last year, possibly the last time we ever saw each other in person that year. And throughout 2 days, we discussed a number of elements of the strategic plan we wanted to put down between vision, mission, our goals, our resources. The forum was held in person in Sydney, but there was also the possibility of participating via Zoom, and we had some interstate participants. But then we felt we had not reached everyone. This is something I wanted to mention. So we've already briefly touched upon the division between qualitative and quantitative research, which is something I feel very strongly in my work. I was trained as a medical doctor in a very positivist environment, so numbers, numbers, numbers. But then my research moved into more of a qualitative space. So in qualitative research, the focus is more on nuance, is on how people perceive their reality and on the assumption that not everyone's reality is the same. And this is something that I feel is starting to become a lot more prevalent also in the hard medical sciences. So we need to be considering this in Quidditch as well. The other thing that we definitely need to consider at that point is that we want to have our sampling is no longer just a numerical statistical element. And I don't even know all the statistics that Rachel probably knows, but we want to have representation from different groups. We want to hear everyone's voices. So we wanted to make sure we could reach into the most regional parts of Quidditch in Australia. We wanted to have representation from all the states of Australia. So we held a series of focus groups throughout the year on Zoom, in which the different elements that had emerged through the strategic forum were then discussed again and put back to the community. Now we have a draft of the strategic plan that's been open for comments, and we've received another layer of input, pretty much like Abby did. It's always important to continuously go over, this is an iterative process, continuously go over, bring back to your participants what you found and see if your findings resonate with the participants or whether they want to add something. So this is basically what we've done.
Yeah, there's another option for a question if we still have the time after the first block of questions, which also relates kind of to like the methodology. So like, do actually people have the skills to do that, which sometimes can be very specific, especially if you come like from a natural science background, I can believe. Just like a quick question back to Abby, like, do you agree that the process of democratizing Quidditch is like something that NGBs will have to face as they grow? Like, is that like, just quick answer, like, do you think that's something that the NGBs are facing as they grow, like having to do surveys?
Quick answer, yes. I think as Quidditch gets bigger, there are greater expectations on NGBs. And certainly when I came in, I don't think that Quidditch UK had sort of a systematic way of gathering data from players, and it wasn't always necessarily a priority, particularly because it was sort of earlier in its development as an organization, and it wasn't something that players had an expectation of. I think as the sport gets larger and as it just kind of becomes more developed, and as Nora said, it becomes more sort of professionalized, I think that is a direction that we're going in, and I think it's important that it does, because as the community grows and the people running the NGBs are not even necessarily active players, I know often that's not the case in USQ, for example, it's important that NGBs show that they are still engaged with what players want, and that is the best way to do it, is by actually asking them what they think.
Yeah, very good points there. Yeah, Ashley's raising his hand and we have time, so go for it.
I don't know if I'm supposed to jump in here, but I kind of wanted to challenge that a little bit, because I think the issue we've had is, as Quidditch started, there was a few hundred people and you knew them all by name. And you'd have a chat with them because you met them every few weeks at a tournament and you worked out exactly what they wanted, and everyone kind of had a rough idea. You all knew each other well enough to get on and come to an agreement. I think we're now at the stage where there's more than a few hundred people, but not too many, where there is that element of democratization, because you need to have enough people engaged to keep things moving forward. But we're starting to reach the point where there's too many people, you're not going to get them engaged. If you get 7 Quidditch players in a room, they come up with 9 opinions, and 8 of those opinions have changed by the time you finish the conversation, and none of them still agree. And as we get further along, there's going to be an element of, yes, here we understand your views, but we have made an executive decision that is not a democratic decision because we think we know what is best, because we're also moving away from everybody who's in the NGB plays, and they've all had the same experience, and they've all started around about the same time and done the same tournaments, and they're all kind of at the same stage, to, well, here's a whole load of players down on this level who've played for 8 months, 15 months, whatever, and then here's a few non-playing NGB members who have played for a decade and have been through this circle and know what happens. And yes, we know that your opinion is it will be really great to have a massive boombox at the tournament, and most of you vote for that, and that's fine. But actually, we know that from experience, with the funds that we have and the finances and the difficulties and the fact it rains all the time, etc., we're not going to do that. So I think there will be an element of moving through a democratic stage to actually, now we're going back to not quite dictatorial, but we'll take it into account, but kind of a parent-child relationship. is my thought anyway.
Yeah, thanks for that bit of like an alternative view. I think something. Sorry, Rachel. I would just prefer to move on. Maybe we have some more options there later, because that's like the relationship between volunteers and community is also something that we've done a thing about. So yeah, maybe we can talk about that later. Yeah, moving over to like some other, like, although these things were very like strategy related and the decision making process of an NGB, like the knowledge collection for that. And then there's things like the ones projects like the ones that Sam's been mentioning. So like specifically relating to injury. Yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and we can also just go into like the general injury topic. So like especially Ashley, you have a medical background, and Sam has a background from other sports, so that might be very interesting to see, like how important is it for Quidditch, especially as a young sport, to have that sort of data collection in injuries. Yeah, Sam, please go ahead.
Thank you, Reich. I think overall, like you mentioned, research is an extremely important dimension when we're talking about furthering Quidditch and any sport in general. And so when you're discussing this being a younger sport and then trying to move it forward, I mean, I think everyone on this panel understands the importance of how injury prevention is one of the biggest factors in actually like advertising and maintaining the amount of people and growing that same population. So that's one aspect of the game, just in terms of moving into the future. In terms of like specifically like what we did here so far, well, we started pretty early in like May 2020, so not much has been able to happen on the field, unfortunately. But the benefit though is that the aspect of using survey methodology, it allows us to do things in retrospective perspectives, and on top of that, we can look at attitudes in Quidditch as well. So one thing I'm doing right now is I'm looking at what's known as the Rockhaus survey. It looks at how much knowledge and what is the degree of attitude that players have on concussions. Like, do our current players, do they know, like, okay, what are the signs of a concussion? What are the problems with the kind of survey? It's called a Rockhaus survey. So it was developed in Penn State. Initially, it was used for high school athletes. So what this survey was, that it was useful in understanding like how much do players truly know, right, about what concussions are and how impactful they are. Because from my background, right, I am currently a medical student and I'm affiliated with the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Washington University. So I've worked in the past with sports where I worked with contact sports. So obviously in these sports, you have that nature of concussions. So because of that, you want to make sure that Quidditch is just up to par as other sports in concussion injuries.
Yeah, Ashley, what do you think about these questions? And also maybe like a pointer, is there like, do you think that there's a bit of like a geographical difference as well? Because I don't know about the UK, you have a lot of other contact sports, but in Germany, we certainly don't have a lot of awareness around concussions. So yeah, just maybe another direction.
I think in the terms on the topic of concussion, we could probably spend a couple of hours talking about it. And I think there's a huge amount of social variation, cultural variation. It's very subjective in lots of areas. And actually, I think in terms of the research that I did, I think, again, I'm probably going to be slightly going against the grain with everyone else, in that I started with a more kind of qualitative retrospective survey, looking at injuries over the past season to gather that kind of data, because I was basically doing it by myself, trying to cover the whole country, literally printing off hundreds of bits of paper and running around the field, demanding people fill them in there and then, because I knew they weren't going to do it. And from that, we ended up with kind of scary levels of injuries, especially concussions. So like 30% of female players reported a concussion versus kind of 10% of male. I can't remember exactly the people who were non-binary, because this is what, 2016, quite a long time ago. But looking at that, actually, as you start to break it down, look at the numbers around it, there's lots of kind of socio-cultural, psychological interpretation that massively biases those subjective qualitative reports. So I think recording injuries properly, especially for a new sport, especially for Quidditch, where after can you fly, the most common question is, do you not impale yourself on the broom? Having that kind of injury data to work out for a new sport, where's the problem, how these injuries happen, what do we do from there? We need to have that data, and the subjective qualitative data was not good enough. So from that, I then developed a quantitative, prospective, professionally informed assessment method where we recorded. So we worked with Epione, who are a really good first aid company, basically do all the work, all the first aid work. Thankfully taken over from me and one other medical student who had helped me out for a while. But we worked with them and they recorded every single injury professionally diagnosed. And the difference is huge. It went from having a very highly significant difference between male and female levels of concussion, way above any other sport on self-reported injury, right down to the kind of levels of rugby, with no statistical significance difference between male and female players. So whereas everyone here in this panel seems to be moving kind of towards the qualitative and focusing on that bit, I think as a Quidditch community, we're very good at that. We're very good at the kind of emotional, kind of softer areas, as opposed to, I found in injuries, you really have to move towards that black and white quantitative, objective measures, and trying to establish. So what I try to do is try to establish a repetitive sampling mechanism with the idea that I knew that I was never going to be able to do this forever, to set it up and so that it will just carry on and can continue year on year. But the difference in concussions, kind of come back to your question, it shows very much the psychosocial impact of subjective reports in there.
Yeah, would you say that, like maybe the question to both of you again, like would you say that this is like gathering data and like having those hard facts is especially relevant to a new sport where the rules are constantly changing? Because I feel like there's always a lot of discussion about any rule changes and then also like the injury factor in there. Would you think that that's like more important to Quidditch than other sports maybe?
I'm happy to take that first. All sports have to do this. Arguably as Quidditch, because we're not well developed in comparison to other sports, we can get away with it for longer, but actually all sports have to do this if you want to become any kind of developed sport. If you look at, say, rugby as the kind of UK example, the rules around the scrum change every few years when there's more data that shows this is a form of injury, this happens. As the game develops, the players have become bigger, faster, stronger, so these impacts are more dangerous. It has to be involved. For Quidditch, we have to overcome what looks to be a very dangerous sport with things like brooms, to overcome public opinion, added to the fact that, to be honest, the vast majority of players, on average, we are not the most athletic sports people out there in comparison to other sports. There are people who have never done sport before, which is less common in other sports. So like the subjective injury study that I did, a lot of people didn't actually know what a concussion was. And actually they thought that headache, or the fact that, you know, their head hurt because they hit the ground with it, is a concussion. So there's a lot of misunderstanding around injuries in Quidditch. And because we don't know how to play it very well yet, regardless of what any of us think, it's still developing massively. We still haven't worked out effectively how to mash 3 games together in a safe way. And it changes so quickly. We have to have that real-time, prospective, objective assessment in order to direct the sport safely, or all the best players will leave because they'll be injured.
Yeah, good point. Just a quick last question on this injury topic, maybe to some, because you also have experience in other sports. Would you agree on that assessment, that like this is a kind of a difference? Obviously,
actually,
knowing that the sport is more developed in the US.
I actually really like the response by Ashley. Definitely, I think with players in Quidditch, from what you've talked about, is that there's been some people don't know like really what is a concussion, you know, with the symptomology. Now I do not want to make it sound like I'm discounting Quidditch. This is similar with not with all sports. US, I've worked with sports related to the International Olympic Committee, like both sides, like it's everywhere. Now the degree to which there is variability. And that right there is why I like to see it, how I like to see that exploration occur. My side being in the US, we're kind of very much on the newer end. So there is no comparative that we can do, like, okay, historically, what has happened in the past? The literature is extremely sparse. We did a systematic review comparing Quidditch to some other sports recently. And but by the time that was published, what you can notice is that, yeah, there's a need for more development. And then if you compare other US sports such as American football, they are extremely much more developed in their not just their knowledge that the players have, but also on top of that, you know, their protocols and their actual like training bases on both high school, college, national levels. So that's something that is ultimately worth aspiring towards, but we have work to do, a long way.
Yeah, just as Ashley said, like we could talk for hours on concussions alone, right? So yeah, I mean, like every research related to NGBs and injuries is like very straightforward, like what the goals are, I guess, and like what areas you're gonna delve into, which is not necessarily the case for like more like of the random and maybe like also academic stuff other people have been doing. So yeah. So Josie, you've done your master's thesis about Quidditch, which
We can't hear you, Rike. Oh, I can't.
Yeah, I also could not hear the question. I thought it was maybe my
You're not muted,
connection.
it doesn't look like.
No, Rika, I think your audio cut out.
Yeah. Like your headphones, maybe?
But maybe Josie could just start talking about her thesis.
Yes, I did not hear the question though. So maybe you could type it, because then I'm not going off topic too much. If not, I can just go back to Ash, because I think he has a point that we have to make a difference in what approach is best for what decision, and that sometimes you need a hard assessment and hard facts if it's about injuries or the best decision making. And I come from a different perspective. I did qualitative research, and I saw myself a lot in what Nora said in the point that not everyone's reality is the same. Did you write something? No.
No, but I found my way back. I was planning to
perfect.
for a second. I thought I got rid of this particular thing. Yeah, it was just like it's very obvious with NGBs and injury service what that can also bring to the community, and maybe like your topic is a bit more niche, and what do you think that one can bring?
Yes, it's very small scale and it's empirical, so I'm a bit unsure about what wider impact it can bring, but as I said, I see myself in what Nora said, that a quantitative, a qualitative perspective, and like my anthropological perspective, you have the benefit of having an open-ended research and being very flexible and kind of digging in what people think. And I, for example, had a very open interview guide. So I was constantly revising that guide, because a lot of topics were brought up by my interview partners themselves. And so I could kind of navigate and get more concrete with what issues people think are most important. So I think that's a benefit that my approach can bring, and that also shows you trends that are that can be an advantage for the bigger picture. Like with me, my data clearly showed that we still have many problems, especially looking at gender equality, and I think that's nothing new to any of you, and that there are a lot of complex factors at play. And it also gives you, it points you to different solutions that could be useful, and that you should maybe then look into from a more quantitative perspective, and maybe choose your surveys and your statistics and kind of combine those.
Yeah, very interesting. In a way, it's kind of like laying the groundwork for some of the work that NGBs might do, like with their diversity and inclusion teams at some point, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Moving on to some of the work that we did in the Quidditch research collective. So yeah, Rachel, maybe you want to just give a quick overview of the current project and what was the motivation behind that, and what specific areas we're covering with what aims.
So currently in the Quidditch Research Collective, we've been finishing we're currently analysing our survey on upper level volunteering and upper level volunteer experiences. This is a mixed method survey, so it's a combination of quantitative and qualitative questions, basically to look on a global scale at all experiences from regional or national level up, and see what it is like to be one of these volunteers. How are they perceived, and what makes people choose to volunteer and what makes people stop? Because especially in the UK, we've had a lot of issues with volunteer burnout and struggling to recruit people, say, to run regional tournaments. And knowing information about what makes people decide to participate or not could be very useful going forward. It's a very big survey, so we can't give a bigger overview of it at some of the time, but we've looked across different continents because, as Ash was saying, sometimes you have a group of people where you can talk to all of them, such as Quidditch Scotland, for instance, but are the opinions and experiences you've heard true? Can they be validated on a more global scale? And so we've got people from pretty much all the continents where Quidditch is played looking at that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I can agree. It's a very big survey. It's when Abby said that she took a big survey with a wide scope, I felt that. Yeah, in being mindful of the time, let's also give Annemieke some talk time. So yeah, so you've also been involved in the survey that Rachel just talked about, and I mean the aims are there also pretty clear, with like volunteering being the backbone of the sport pretty much. Yeah, maybe you can talk a bit about the other surveys you did and what was the motivation behind that, and maybe also some like impacts you've seen from publishing your results.
Right. Yeah, so I think the actual official term for what I do is community-based research. But what I, as a biologist, like to call it in my head is just I'm angry and I throw out a Google form. It's sort of, that's also how I got started initially. So I was live streaming and I was just so annoyed that there was only dudes in the stream tent with me. And it was just, I mean, I know why women don't speak up in life, the patriarchy. But I figured if I was gonna explain to people that the reason we don't have female commentators or femme commentators isn't that they don't want to, it's simply that they do not feel confident. Well, you can say that to people, but they're not gonna believe you until you shove a number under their face. So I figured I would find the number to shove under their faces. And actually what I found there was quite striking was that female commentators with more than 10 games of commentary experience, which I would say is a relatively, especially in Europe, that's a well-experienced commentator, had the same level of confidence as a male respondent to my survey with 0 games of experience. Whereas it's like, oh yeah, I can see now where the problem arises. And actually, as soon as we had this clear data within Phoenix TV, so the biggest European streaming company, we really made a mindful effort, also from some of the open form questions that I included, to include women more and to include femme people more, and to actively, consciously reach out to people and say, hey, we know that you probably don't think you can do this because we've looked into this and you feel like you can't do this, but actually that's the patriarchy and we're going to smash it. So come on, here's the mic and we're going to do it. And I found that this was rather helpful in convincing people because it validates their experience. And the year following that, the following year after we did, after I did the survey, I think we increased our female percentage of female commentators by, I think, 50% or so. So that was I was quite happy with that. Yeah, and then after that I moved on to reffing, because in refereeing there's basically the same issue where you, especially with head refereeing, you just have the dudes and the dudes know the reffing. And then yeah, I found basically a very similar pattern where men without any refereeing certificates were actually more confident in their head reffing skills sometimes than fully certified female head referees. And not to say that, like, I dig it, I'm all for confidence, but it does pain me a bit that, especially, I mean, I know a lot of female head referees, and in the Netherlands one of our biggest head referees was Chula Bruggeling, who was, especially in Europe, quite famous. So in the Netherlands this was not really an issue where female players did not feel like they could head ref, but it yeah, when you see these numbers, you are really like, oh yeah, we have some progress to make. And then last year when you texted me saying like, hey, this thing about upper level volunteers, should we take a look? And I myself, having been an NGB volunteer, I definitely know that those experiences yeah, can be very interesting. So in that sense, yeah, it's a community-based research based on slightly frustrated but then empowering Google surveys.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think we have to close very soon. Oops, I'm just gonna
3 minutes left, I think.
3 minutes left.
2.
Okay, 2. Oh, great. I'm just gonna quickly had a quick look at the Q&A window. Italia, I think someone already posted our Facebook in the yeah, remember we can bring questions to Slack, very good point. Italia, someone posted our Facebook already, and so if you follow that Facebook, I can collect all the info from the specific research that has been on this panel and post that to our page. And also, yeah, thanks for someone just posted that again. Yeah, so yeah, you can follow up there, and then obviously also on Slack. And then I saw that Alejo also, yeah, posted about his journal about of broom-mounted sports, which I guess also has a relevance to surveys. I actually saw that. At this point, we already had so many panelists that I couldn't agree to someone else joining. But yeah, that's definitely like an interesting thing to see where the future of Quidditch research maybe goes with, so like all people can collect that and maybe have like a bit of a global knowledge hub that all NGBs and countries can use, because ultimately we all run into the same problems sooner or later, which we can also see with injuries and NGB methods and so on. So yeah, I think those are all the open questions we have there. Yeah, before I ask the final quick round of the closing question, I just want to say thanks to all of you for attending. I know we're, I guess each and every one of us could talk at least for an hour on like the specific topic that we came here for. So I'm a bit sorry for not having the opportunity to dive a little deeper. Yeah. And yeah, maybe we have an opportunity in the future to discuss this again, and maybe do like a specific conference just on Quidditch research, or just hijack the next QuidCon. So yeah, I will, and let's just do like a quick fire round of like the last closing question. So obviously we all did everything we did on like a volunteer basis. So yeah, what's the kind of what, I guess the closing question is like, what research project would you do if you had unlimited time and resources? Like, what area would you go into that doesn't necessarily have to be the one that you started with? So maybe let's go the other way around and not the alphabetical order. Yeah, go ahead.
Like Ashley said, concussions, you can do hours and hours. Literally, that's my answer.
My answer is disability. Speaking as an autistic person, I'm very interested to learn more about disabled and neurodivergent experiences in Quidditch.
So I think I'm next. I think my answer would be finding out how we can fix our problems, not just on equity and equality, but also finding out how we can sustainably grow our sport and make it better and bigger.
I think I would probably go with inclusion of people of color and stereotypes, and from a critical race theory perspective, what barriers there are.
Is it me next? I've lost track of the alphabet backwards. I think it's me. Ideally, I would use MRI scans. I'd scan loads of people, have a look top to toe, brain to body, etc. Going to play Quidditch for a few years, then scan them again, see the differences, including fMRI to see their psychological and brain changes, because that's my area of doctoring.
First of all, yes. as a natural scientist, yes. But then more to what I've been doing in Quidditch, the one thing that I would be so excited about, but it's just so impossible, would be to have a global survey on why people join, stay, and leave Quidditch, which I think could encompass a lot of the things that other people have mentioned. So do they leave because of concussions? Do they leave because they are a person of color and don't feel safe? Do they leave because they don't feel taken seriously as a woman? Is it their disability? This would be just yes, but so impossible.
Mine would be with a recruitment focus, particularly on youth Quidditch and developing adult novices through a pipeline that isn't universities.
I guess the conclusion is that we just have to find some millionaires to invest, and then everything will be good. Yeah, like my answer is Quidditch volunteering, everything about that, which is kind of what we're already doing. But maybe if I got paid for it, then it would not take a year to analyze all the data. So yeah. All right. Yeah, it only remains to say thank you again, and thanks for all of our listeners. Yeah. Okay, no new questions, and yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us. If you still need anything from any of the people on the panel, you can just reach out to our Facebook page and we'll connect you, and also the Slack channel, of course, which the lovely people of the QuidCon organizing team have just reminded us of. And yeah, also thanks for organizing and giving us this platform, and yeah, maybe again soon.
Bye-bye.
Y'all.
Bye everyone, thanks for being here.
Bye, thanks for attending.